Welcome back, everyone. I've got round 4 today of the Who Let the Doge Out tournament. This time I'm up against some High Elves. I won't go through my list again because if you haven't already heard about it, you can hear about it in one of my previous videos. My opponent today, I don't know where this one listed in terms of the 5 potential armies I could face, but I generally hate playing High Elves. So it can't have been too high, so I'm not getting a great run in this tournament so far. Basically what he's got is he's got the usual big block of Sea Guard with Master of Kenrick Tower BSB and a Sliver Prince in it. He's also got a Master of Pyro, so I'm pretty much expecting that even before I'm into the special, the rest of his core or anything, this will basically be a list that tries to sit back and shoot you. He's got Highborn Lancers for a bit of scoring, I think, a unit of Chaff Reavers, a small unit of Lion Guard, a big unit of Swordmasters, which is a bit unusual from what I normally see from High Elves, but I think they're pretty good. A Giant Eagle, fairly decent sized units of fairly decent sized unit of Queen's Guard, and then 3 Bolt Throwers. So I'm pretty sure, looking at this list when I was going into this game, I was like, well, with all of that shooting, I'm almost certain that he's not going to advance towards me. So that pretty much informed how I was going to play the game, no matter what. But he does obviously have the solid combat unit of the Swordmasters, who are relatively fast on the charge because of the War Banner. And the Sea Guard are always hard to deal with because of the characters in there and how well the magic works at pushing them into a decent combat unit if you just get one buffer. From looking at a few of my previous videos as well, I'm a little bit disconcerted by the whole disembodied voice explaining everything to you, so I'm just going to try chucking my camera on and see how I like that for this video, and we'll see how it goes. First thing that I saw was that I was going to be in a terrible spot if I had it down in that bottom left-hand corner, because that's where a lot of the action is going to take place, as you'll see from this deployment. Basically, I deployed everything to go first after my opponent won table sides, and basically, the reason for that was pretty much just because I wanted to avoid an extra turn of shooting if I could, and get to use that wall as hard cover if he deployed in the left-hand corner like he did. And I figured if I deployed my 2 main blocks relatively centrally, they'd be able to, it might take a little bit longer, and in fact did for the Bruisers based on how he's deployed in that bottom left-hand corner, but I could get to either side of the board if I needed to with the Mercvets or the Bruisers. The objective was breakthrough, so I put the Bruiser Dart on the left-hand side and the Mercvets on the other side near the Impassable. Basically just thinking that because of his lack of mobility and scoring units, he's going to have a bit of a hard time getting anything into my zone. So if I just spread one on each, if he ends up cornering like he did, I'd have a pretty good run down one side or the other. Stacked that right-hand side with the Tigers and the Bruisers pretty much because I felt that if he went on the left-hand side, I can spare them and I don't really need them. Whereas I can't bring the Aurochs over to help. But if he deployed on the right-hand side, you know what? It's not making as much sense as I thought now that I think it back. I'm not really sure. Maybe I just felt like I could deal with the things on the left-hand side. Or like if he deployed on the right-hand side, it wouldn't matter as much if he put the Lancers there, the Lion Guard there. I don't know. Doesn't seem like a great plan in retrospect, to be honest. My first turn, I basically just pushed pretty much as far as I could. The Mercvets didn't move their full distance, but they just sat getting hard cover from the wall. I also realized either after I did this or on my next turn before moving, I was sort of looking, and I don't think that the Mercvets win a fight against the Swordmasters. So I'm going to have to push up to likely give him an easier charge because we're as fast as each other. He might even have Swift Stride with the banner, but he's at least movement 6 on the charge. And because of his superior ranged game, like, he has no reason to charge until I've given him a favourable one. So I was looking at that, and if he charges me, he goes to agility 7. My Frost Mammoth will bring him down to agility 4, but that's still faster than my Merc-Vet. So running the quick maths in my head, I just sort of went, you know what, I can't actually fight there until I do something about those Swordmasters. I kept the Bruisers on the left a little bit back, basically because I didn't think they really wanted to fight the Lion Guard. And if I held them back, he'd have to sort of worry about them going down into his zone or potentially later on threatening a flank charge or something around the side of that building. So pretty much I was happy with them to just sort of play coy up there, try and win that right-hand flank to win the objective, and then have the main game happen sort of where the Merc-Vets are staring down the Sea Guard. Over on the right-hand side, I think I didn't give him a charge at all with the Cav, because I didn't want him to charge my dogs, because I sort of felt that was a little bit too much of a dicey combat. And since the trappers were already out there, I had the chaff advantage over there. So if he wanted to charge them and maybe overrun into my Aurochs, I didn't really care. But eventually I figured if I don't give him a charge turn 1, I'll win out there, unless the Bolt Thrower panics stuff off or something. I think this is after, like, at the end of my shooting or magic or something, and it looks like I've only killed one Sea Guard, but I did get off Chilling Howl, the bounce spell from the Frost Mammoth, which is pretty big. I think, let's see, if I put it on those Swordmasters down there, which is the unit it's next to, that means I think it would touch the Sea Guard, the Queen's Guard, and the Bolt Thrower with the 6-inch aura, so it's a pretty handy spot for the -1 to wound from shooting. After his turn, looks like I think I've lost a whole unit of lead belchers. Let's see. Yeah, the unit next to the house is dead. And then I've lost 2 of the 3 in the unit between the Bruisers and the Merc-Vets. Other than that, it looks like, I mean, as most of these high elf games kind of go, there's just a little bit of shifting on his main blocks and not much aggressive happening anywhere else. Looks like on the right-hand side, he also just tried to get out of range for my scraplings to trap him. But I'm still pretty confident over there, because if my Sabertusk fail a charge or whatever, I can't just flee with them or something. They're insignificant, and those Merc-Vets over there are Swift Stride, and I think they beat the Lancers even if they charge, because the Lancers don't have enough attacks. This would be my turn 2. After movement, so I've just kept my Merc-Vets in the middle, basically because, as I said, I figured out I can't really press too hard because I don't want to fight the Swordmasters, particularly if they charge me. So if I waited for my my Rock Aurochs and my Bruisers to get around, at least then I've got multiple threats coming in at once, and I could spend the time in the interim whittling down those Swordmasters until they're manageable. On the right, I obviously declared a charge with the Sabertusks, and they got in against the Lancers, and I don't think it went that well, to be honest, but I was expecting, with all the attacks I've got, 15, 18 attacks, and I'm striking the same time as him on the charge. I was expecting to be pretty decent, but I think I maybe killed one, and he maybe killed one back. It ended up being a lot tighter than I wanted it to be. I also brought my Kineta down just on that right hand. Nope, that's just scrolling all across all the things. Just down here on the right hand Bolt Thrower. Mainly because I figured if I deal with that Bolt Thrower, there's nothing else that's going to stop the Merc-Vets from being in... the small Merc-Vets from being in his deployment zone, so I'd have a pretty good handle on that objective already. I was actually feeling... I don't know if I'm ever confident against high elves these days. I've lost to them too many times to feel confident, but I felt like this was going pretty okay. Like everything was sort of... I felt my position was quite good, and if I played well, I'd probably be able to get a fairly reasonable win out of this from here. This is after like my magic and my shooting and stuff, so as you can see, I've put a pretty big whack on that Swordmaster block just next to his Sea Guard in the field. So I still wouldn't really want the Merc Vets to fight him, because as soon as they fight them, I'll probably win in the end, but my Merc Vets would be depleted enough that they couldn't really do much for the rest of the game. So I'm probably wanting one more turn to just sort of blast away at them. Yeah, so after my opponent's turn, he's obviously chaffed on that sort of to the right of the middle. My Aurochs, he took down a few Merc Vets with some, I think, magic and probably a bit of shooting, because even with hard cover, he'll still get some hits in, and doesn't look like anything else has taken wounds except the lone lead belcher who was left is now dead. And he's gone a bit aggressive up on that left-hand side, obviously, with his Lion Guard. I think, from the looks of this, I'm pretty sure my bruisers would be able to see them. So, I don't know, what's that? He'd have 9 attacks, hitting me on 3s, winning me on 2s, and I'd have an impact hit first, and then probably, I've already taken 2 wounds. I probably only have the champ left, so it's probably not looking great out there, which is why my confidence at the start in regards to the objective seems misplaced, because I don't really know what else I expected to happen over there if the bruises ended up against the Lion Guard, which obviously was easily possible even when he cornered on that side. Yeah, so in my next turn, I sort of decided, look, this is it. This is the time to play the game. I was actually tempted to just stay behind that terrain in the middle and just wait it out, sort of. I'd give myself another turn. But with how quickly my shooting was dying, it sort of was looking to me like this was going to be my time, because if I pushed everything up, I can probably, with my magic, my lead belchers, do enough damage. There's only a couple of Swordmasters left, if any. And then he probably doesn't want to charge him with the Sea Guard, was what I was thinking. But I don't actually know if that's true, because I keep underestimating the Sea Guard block, and it's always so much better than I imagine. But so I felt like this was the time to push forward, because I could deal with those Swordmasters, and then I had what I thought was a really good matchup of my Merc Vet staring down the Sea Guard. And looking at the position of the characters, no, I think it's a Mage on the corner, so I wouldn't be denying attacks. Because if I can get a time when, say, my champion is in contact with, or his character is only in contact with my champion or my character, it's probably handy for me, because it means that all his attacks have to go into him. But he's got a turn to fix that if that was the case anyway. This would be, at the end of my turn 3. So I was able to kill the Swordmasters to a man, which I think, this game was about a month ago, so I could be a little bit wrong on some of the details, but I think it was pretty lucky in terms of all I got off killing him. And he has a 5-up armor save, but I feel like from all my AP0 Pyro spells, he made basically none the entire time. My Saber Tusks over on the right obviously won their combat eventually. I was a little bit... I thought I would win that pretty handily. I may have done the maths at the time, and I think their armor save is just sort of the real variable, because when you get a 3-up armor save, you can easily make a lot of them. But I did win, and I expected to win, so it was good that I did, because if I'd lost that, I'd be very disappointed in the dogs again. Only other real thing I didn't mention in my movement is the bruisers moved up to the Lion Guard. So basically, I think their position there, the Lion Guard are in my front, but if they charged, only 2 models would get in contact. So, that's then 4 attacks against my probably 7, which I feel a lot more confident about fighting. After his turn, He did a lot more damage to my Merc Vets than I anticipated. And also got +1. I want to say it's toughness, but it might even be strength. I think it's toughness off on his Sea Guard. So after this round of shooting and just general sort of damage, I was basically looking at this game and I was like, well, I don't think that I win this combat anymore. So I need to get the bruises in alongside the Merc Vets, I think. That's what I'm thinking now. I might not have thought that at the time. I definitely at the time thought, I don't think my Merc Vets win this combat anymore. But what I've got is I've definitely got a potential charge from the Aurochs. I've got a potential charge from the bruises, and I've got like an auto-win charge from the Merc Vets. And my dog that he failed to kill next to the building also has the ability to charge in the flank and deny the spear bonuses, basically. Which means that if I get my Frost Mammoth within 9 inches, I will actually go before all of his rank and file. But with the toughness 4, I was still sort of thinking, realistically, I've only got 8 wounds left in that unit. And I don't break him. I might do some damage, but there's probably a pretty good chance that I just end up running into him, doing some damage, losing them, and getting nothing. So really, I wanted, at this point, to just go back behind my wall, but the ship had sailed on that one, because if I turned around, I'd just get charged in the flank, in the rear, and I'd probably lose. So I'm sort of regretting all of my life decisions at this point, but at least the right-hand side is going well for me. This looks like my movement. So, from what I can see, so the Merc Vets have obviously made it, and the Sabertooth went into the rear, into the flank. The bruises, obviously, they're center to center, so I must have declared a charge with those bruises. From the distance, I feel like it wasn't easy. They might have needed a 9 or something, but I don't specifically remember. I sent the Aurochs into the bolt thrower, so I must have decided that was too long a charge for him to go. And basically, I don't know, my vague memory of this game is I was a little bit positive or a little bit excited about the fact that I was like, I finally gotten my big combat block into his Sea Guard. They're just core shooty elves. But realistically, I think anyone who knows what they're talking about, who's watching this, will know, like, nah, mate, you're stuffed. He's got a Spear Prince in there. There's nothing you can do. I'll have a look to see where his characters are. So, it looks like what he's done is he's dropped his wizard back into the back unit of Queensguard before I charged. He's put his Spear Prince down the bottom right-hand corner. I'm not really 100% sure why he would do that. Maybe just to minimize attacks on him. But it means that he will have to only attack my Pyromancer. His BSB up the top, we had a bit of a discussion as he reformed, and I confirmed that basically because he's 11 wide, I'd have to, if I charge the Sabertooth in the flank, I would have to contact the BSB, which is like, I think 3 attacks with a great weapon before I get to strike. If he killed the dog, I'm pretty sure the way the spear rule works is, so because you set agility at the start of a combat, he wouldn't get the +2 agility, so I'd still be going before him because of the Frost Mammoth aura. But if he kills the dog, he does get the additional +1 AP, so it'd be Strength 3, AP 2. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else really going on that's all that interesting. It's basically all just in that combat where the game's probably going to be won or lost. But I think probably the game was won or lost because that's not looking like a good combat. Game was probably lost when I moved out from behind the wall, when I had a fairly safe play for the objective otherwise. And I probably, if they had hard cover the whole time, probably could have held on to the points for at least half the Merc Vets if I didn't move them out. And then it's also a case of who knows what the Aurochs could do, causing trouble and trying to get, like, I mean, he'd probably take some damage on the way, and he'd probably end up dying, but at least he'd be a magnet because of the amount of damage that he could deal out if he got to charge something. This, yeah, it's clearly after my turn. So it looks like I won the combat because I killed quite a few Seaguard, but, you know, I've got 2 wounds on my wizard. I've only got the champ left in the unit. The dog somehow managed to survive the bear's bees attacks, which was pretty unlucky for my opponent. Because it probably, I guess, having +1 AP probably would have mattered for the attacks into my MoCT unit. But either way, how it happened is I won the combat by the looks of it, but he's steadfast, leadership 10, rerollable, so they're never going to go anywhere. And pretty much what I was thinking here was I wasn't sure if the bruisers would be able to beat the Seaguard, because something I've underestimated before, and I underestimated again this game, is like that Master of Kenreed Tower caster with those Seaguard. It's really good, like, because you just get one spell through, and all of a sudden, when you've got the Spear Prints in there to boost their output, they're actually just a really solid combat unit. And it's very hard to stop them getting either, like, regen, +1 strength, and with, like, Pyro as well, you can give them Flaming Swords with +1 to wound. There's just a lot of ways to make them a really solid unit that doesn't take many wounds, sometimes can dish out a lot, but then otherwise the Spear Prince is just sort of going, cool, I've done, 3 or 4 wounds to you. You haven't done that many to me. I've got banners. I've got the other wounds from my unit. I probably win by a couple. And if I don't, I'm steadfast and I'm sticking here on my high leadership. So I wasn't sure if the bruisers actually wanted to go in, but definitely if I could get the bruisers in and the Aurochs in as well, I'd be pretty happy with that. So I was disappointed to be losing the MoCT and my wizard, which is what I'm assuming is going to happen in my opponent's turn. But actually, the eagle's just going to move down, which is what's going to happen. So I've done all this analysis. It's not actually going to be relevant. I should probably just move on to that one. So the eagle, with some clever positioning, was able to basically stop my Aurochs from being able to charge. And my my champion MoCT survived, which chaffed my bruisers. So, in fact, I'd forgotten about that. And it was quite a frustrating, disappointing part to that, because I didn't even get the sort of second setup play, I guess, where I was maybe able to get another round in against those Seaguard. And then, unfortunately, after... Because that all happened in my opponent's turn. And then in my turn, when my MoCT ran through my bruisers, they failed a panic test and they fled. So didn't get a chance on that one. The Aurochs did what he could to try and kill the eagle. He might have even failed a frenzy check to do that. And yeah, basically, there's not really very many ways that I can pick up more points here. But at least because he can't get to my MoCTs in the other corner, and he doesn't have enough time or any units advanced enough to get into mine, I'd at least hold on to the objective. I think... So, with all the shooting damage that can be done, I was expecting my Aurochs to die. So, basically, he was in contact with the eagle in the previous picture. And I think I had, like, an 11 or a 12 to overrun into the Seaguard unit. So I just sort of went, if I do a post-combat pivot, I'll probably just die to all the shooting. So I might as well just go for that and see if I can get anything from him. But he didn't make it, which is, exactly what you'd expect. So he was there, and I was pretty much certain that he was going to die. I've obviously done a few wounds with my shooting from the Lead Belchers and the Frost Mammoth into the Lion Guard, but I was also expecting the Lion Guard probably kill my Frost Mammoth on the next counter charge. Pretty much at this point, I was just hoping that my MoCT and my bruisers rallied, so I'd save some points over there. But he probably kills the MoCT anyway, so I guess the bruisers are really the main thing. And yeah, so unsurprisingly, in his turn, he killed the Aurochs without needing a charge. But surprisingly, his Lion card only managed to put 2 wounds onto the Frost Mammoth, and then the Frost Mammoth killed 6 remaining, so 5 of them. They stuck around, but pretty surprising result for him to still be standing and have done so much damage to the unit. Yeah, I mean, otherwise it's just all he's got left is those units in the bottom left corner. So the 3 characters, the block of Seaguard, the Queen's Guard, and the Bolt Thrower. I've got 1 turn, but, units fleeing. The Frost Mammoth's still engaged, so he won't be able to charge anything. And then the Bombardier is probably just going to run away, I imagine I would do. Yeah, so I put the Bombardier behind hard cover. Looks like the Bruisers failed to rally. I mean, which is something that people often sort of remark on things like that in my games with Ogres, saying, like, oh, really unlucky that happened. But when you don't run a BSB, it is a lot more likely. So they failed, basically, I guess, 3 Leadership 8 tests in a row. But I don't know what the odds are on that, but it feels very, like, not likely, but possible. Like, it's the sort of thing that, yeah, that happens. When you don't run a BSB, when you're in a Leadership 8, yeah, sometimes you have a bit of bad luck on the Leadership dice. Whereas if the High Elf guy with his Leadership 10 reroll and then minimize for rally tests, it happened to, you'd feel like, yeah, that's really unlucky. But for me, that's just sort of a thing that I've accepted with my army. So I can't be too salty about the fact that Bruisers didn't turn around and they ended up giving half points. I think pretty much in the end, all that's going to happen is probably the Lead Belch will die. Probably the Merc doesn't need to die, it's already giving up 4 points. And then I'm assuming that the Frost Mammoth will die as well. So it turns out, actually, that's my last slide. Which means he's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So he's got, I didn't take a picture at the end of the game, obviously, but this is after my turn 6. He's got 1 turn left. I'm pretty confident shooting a magic will kill the Frost Mammoth. Maybe the Lead Belcher dies as well. But pretty much the result of this game on points was a 14-6 to my opponent, but because I had the secondary objective, it went to an 11-9 to him. The real disappointing thing, basically, and I find this when I play High Elves a lot, I get this feeling. So when I'm in this position, I've got my Merc sitting behind a wall, and I'm in a relatively safe position where I basically have a decision of I can either try and win, I can go forward and go like, you know what, I'll push into combat and see if I can break through what are realistically some hard units over there. The better play, I thought after I took out those wins from the first round of shooting, here, the better play I think is just to stay back. So I don't like playing that way. I don't like just going like, okay, well, we'll accept a drawish game where I try and win the objective down the right-hand flank and you try and win it down the left-hand flank. And nothing else really happens. But the alternative is the fact that I have to advance and I have to take all the risks in this matchup, which is what I feel against High Elves most of the time, because they run, not everybody obviously, but a lot of the lists run a very similar sort of quite static shooting with good counter threat charges. This one is less on the counter threat charges because it doesn't have like pretty much the Griffin character or units of Ryma Knights. But the Swordmasters were, at least in this particular matchup, because I'm not an overly fast army, just as good at that role. But yeah, it's just a little bit sort of... It made me feel like the game's almost a little bit pointless. My opponent was really nice. We had decent fun chatting and everything, but I was just sort of sitting there going like, we could have... At like turn 3, I could have just been like, alright, well, I'm not doing anything for the rest of this game. And it probably would have been my best play. Because... at least with his sort of infantry-based army, he doesn't have as many options to bring the game to me. So I don't have the range game to win if I sit back, but I probably have the sort of defensive capabilities that I can, and enough range damage that I can keep the score pretty close. And then if everything happened the same way on the left-hand flank and on the right-hand flank, if I... went down 12-8 instead of 14-6, I would have won 11-9 rather than losing 11-9. So, I don't know. It just feels like this is sort of a matchup that I continually underestimate the one, the shooting power of Strength 3 bows. Obviously, Queen's Guard a little bit better, but I see a lot of lists without the Queen's Guard, and the Sea Guard seem to just do a lot. Although maybe that's the fact that I often run Beastman, so I don't get the an armor save that would be quite helpful. But yeah, it's just sort of like I keep underestimating Sea Guard, and I keep playing into these matchups where the end result, like not the matchup, but this situation in the game where I had the choice of, do I walk past the wall or do I just stay here and play cagey and basically not much else will happen in the game? And I keep being faced with a decision like that where I go like, no, I'm going to play the game. I'm going to go in there. And the end result, I'm almost always getting to the end of the game and going like, shouldn't have done that. Should have just stayed back. Should have spent the next 3 hours of my night just doing nothing. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that maybe I need to reevaluate either my list specifically to be better in this kind of a situation. I'm not really, like off the top of my head, I'm not really sure what I would do other than including more range, but I don't like to go too ranged heavy because I find it a bit boring. Or maybe just my decision making and sort of being willing to cut my losses, particularly in a team game where I'm like, well, look, this wasn't something that I viewed as a good matchup for me, so you know, if I could squeeze out that 12, it's probably more valuable than the 9 I managed to get anyway. Particularly because that left-hand flank is a little bit sketchy. With those Lion Guard, I was sort of positioning my bruisers to annoy them and force them not to be able to maximize the charge properly. But if that had gone badly for me to manage to get those Lion Guard up the left-hand flank earlier, you know, that would mean a drawn objective, I guess, at the end of the game. So I would have lost 14-6, and then I would have felt really bad about not keeping it cagey and going like 12-8, loss by just staying behind that wall, keeping my bruises further back, and picking up the points that I can get on the right-hand side. But yeah, I'm not really sure what better way I should have approached that one, but I definitely need better strategies because every time I play against High Elves, it seems to be the same sort of result where I run into a combat, or I rush to get to a combat because I'm losing the shooting game, and then I lose in combat as well. So, like, 9th is too balanced for that to be the list's fault or the game's fault. Like, there's definitely options for me that I can address that with how I play and how I build my lists, but I'm just not sure what the answers are yet. Anyway, thanks for sticking around for this one. I should get the next one out probably in a week or so, I reckon, just to round out the tournament. And we'll see how it went having my little Twitch-like cam up in the corner. I'm hoping it makes it seem a bit less like I'm sort of sitting in a room talking to myself in the end, but we'll see how it goes. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.